Alrighty, we see you warming up. The big bad kitty. Rather interesting, but somehow not surprising. Old Elbus is threatening to go off YouTube again. Good riddance. What was it, last year you were going to go off? Probably about a year ago from this point. You were going to go off. Shut down the channel, blah, blah. You're back again the next day. After having a dumpster dive because no one's giving you donations. Then you were going to get off when you got to Chicago. And you still stayed on for a bit. Been in Chicago for a few weeks now. And now, I'm only on YouTube for my survival. What do you mean, dude? You're getting fucking more or less nothing. Anyway, you know, you're e-begging and getting nothing. So how are you on here for your survival? Thinking of cutting it back very, very limited because of, for reasons of mental health. Oh, dude, your mental health was already shot to bits beforehand. And now he wants to become an Assyrian nationalist. Oh, fuck me. Is this a bit like the time you suggested that we donate money to 2 or 3 different Assyrian militias? Are these going to end up like al-Nusra? You know, allies one day, al-Qaeda the next? You know. Now, they may not have, or they may have. But I assume they're not any, terrorist organisation. But he came out with an absolute ripper. Kurdistan. Now, those of you who don't know, the Kurdish people had a nation. I don't know if it was called Kurdistan. I assume it may well have been. They had 5 neighbours attack them at once. And they basically become nationless people. Now, we're sort of, north of Iraq and sort of, east of Turkey, up in the top pocket there. And all of these countries all moved on them at once. And they were fucked. They didn't have a chance. And they basically lost. But they lost their whole country for it to be absorbed into a few other countries. And apparently, I know now, and it's one of the more peaceful areas, there's a pocket of northern Iraq that is known as Kurdistan now. It's not what it originally used to be, but it's something. And they are sort of like a autonomous region, autonomous province or whatever under the Iraqi government or something of that nature. When the rest of Iraq was getting the shit bombed out of it, some US troops were stationed there. It was constantly peaceful. Business was flying. Things were going fine. Jewelers were selling gold chains and everything. I've seen video of it. And apparently there's some money that come from the Iraqi government to build houses for Assyrians, and the Kurds built the houses to, and we're telling the Assyrians we're going to take these houses. And here old fucking dum-dum is trying to tell us that there was a conspiracy between ISIS and the Kurds got these houses that were built for the Assyrians. Because some young guy who's recently immigrated from Iraq said that the Kurds have ended up in these houses. So there's a conspiracy between ISIS and the Kurds. Oh, fuck off. Out of everyone fighting against ISIS, the Syrian army, the Iraqi army, the Libyans, the Russians, and the Kurds fought the hardest. It's people I know that have been in the military and not just quoted they've been in the military, but I know for a fact they've been in the military. This character has served in both Afghanistan and Iraq, and he's seen Kurdish women fighting, and he's told me they fight like hell compared to any of the other fighters that he's seen. And you know, quite simply, the Kurds fought harder than anyone else against ISIS. Oh, but the Assyrians had to, you know, get out of there when ISIS came in. Yeah, okay, rightio. So there's a conspiracy between ISIS and the Kurds. No, what happened is ISIS come into the region, the Assyrians ran away like little bitches, and when the Kurds fought ISIS off, there's a whole bunch of empty houses left by Assyrians that have left. So they moved into them. There's your bloody conspiracy. That's the more likely option. But oh no, Mr. Poor Me, victim is going to turn around and say that there was some collaboration between the Kurds and ISIS. Not just that the Assyrians left and the Kurds moved into the empty houses. After they put in the hard yards fighting against ISIS. Did we see any footage of Assyrian militias fighting against ISIS? Huh? There's like 3 of them. I didn't even remember seeing anything on TV of one of the Assyrian militias fighting ISIS. But anyway, you know, it's always easy to whinge, moan and blame somebody else for an unfortunate incident. But the real cracker is now that he wants to work on being an Assyrian nationalist. Alrightio. Okay. So, for those of you who don't know it, there's a website called Assyrian Voice. Now, this is basically a website that was set up by Assyrians to keep the Assyrian native tongue alive. And they could come on there and they could talk, and this is still going today, this website. They could come on there and they could talk to each other with their microphones, not tapping away on the keyboard, but they could talk to each other with their microphones in Assyrian. And, you know, anyone who logged in could hop on and say stuff. And back in 2001, a glorious old mate, Elbus, they used to have people who were, you know, professional singers, Assyrian singers, and stuff like that. Lots of different guests come on and talk and whatnot, but, you know, any member of the public can go in there and talk. So old Elbus would go in under whatever handle he wanted, under whatever bloomin' account he made this time, and he would usually bring in a Polish friend who he would make an account for, and this Polish friend, he'd tell them what to say, and they'd just swear and swear and swear at everybody in Assyrian. He'd cuss out everyone. He'd swear at everyone in Assyrian and say some really disgusting crap in Assyrian to everybody who was on the platform, and, you know, all in Assyrian, and a lot of them were fairly shocked and disgusted, particularly the guests that had been, you know, brought on for that week. So, back in 2001, he's been trolling the shit and slandering the shit out of his own people that he now wants to become a nationalist for and promote. Well, I hate to say it, buddy, but they're going to recognise your voice. And some of them remember who you are. And this is going back only a few years ago. 2 or 3 years ago, some of them still remembered your name and what you got up to. And I remember you telling us about 2 years ago, I don't know if you trolls know, but I have Assyrian trolls as well. Yeah, that's probably like blowback from all the time you've gone in there and, you know, slandered and swore at all the Assyrians on Assyrian Voice. But, you know, we're not supposed to know these sort of things. You were just supposed to be able to do all this crap with impunity without any of us ever finding out. Well, guess what? We found out. I got a video where I mentioned it previously. It says something like 25 years of slanderous rants, and I mentioned it in there. But it's been known for a few years that that's what he used to do. And now these same people that he is slandering at, he wants to become a nationalist for. And he told a little story of another Assyrian guy who's an Assyrian nationalist who used to bring singers over to Assyria, or should we say Iraq. And, you know, it was, he was well known and he was famous and he was quite successful and blah, 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 blah. And I think in due course, old Elbus being Elbus, this is yet another plot to find a way to mooch off other people without having a real job, because that is usually what's behind nearly every idea he comes out with. So he's probably going to think that he's going to set up like this other Assyrian guy, hope that they don't remember all his slandering on AssyrianVoice.net, and hope they don't find him ranting about being visited by aliens, and hope they don't find all the videos of his Craigslist ads with his bare ass. And let's face it, you know, at some point he'll probably put up another one of these ads in between trying to build his career as a nationalist. But really speaking, it would be just to set up some sort of a charity with the idea of helping Assyrians or helping the Assyrian nation, or like he was saying about this young guy who had recently migrated from Iraq, that, you know, he may be trying to help them migrate to America, you know, and of course a good deal of that money that would be donated for the purpose of helping the Assyrian people and the Assyrian nation. And not that that really exists as an actual physical nation on the map, but, you know, a lot of this money, well, you know where it'll go into. Shawarma sandwiches and bloody frolicking around doing nothing again. But I hate to tell him that you can't just set up a charity and say, give me money on the basis of helping the Assyrian people, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and then you just sort of flop out like you have on YouTube and expect there to be no repercussions, because the Assyrian people will probably make sure there's going to be repercussions. But, you know, if they know where you are physically, personally, or they have any details about you, you may end up having a little warrant out for fraud or something like that. And it may get a bit more serious than a couple of quote-unquote trolls harassing you on a social media platform. And honestly, if you're that frickin' dumb, and I believe you probably are that dumb, that you think you can just click your fingers and start a charity and there's very little paperwork and very little anything, no, you're wrong. There is mountains of paperwork, mountains of checks and balances. And I know that Trump is cutting back on paperwork for business regulations, but that doesn't necessarily mean for charity regulations, because like lowering the business red tape and bureaucracy and regulations increases jobs, but lowering the charity one, well, you know, maybe you'll get to that, and you know, it'll be years before anybody gets to that. And most charities have a lot of paperwork involved, and there is checks and balances, and the money has to be spent appropriately and accounted for. You can't just go spending this on shawarma sandwiches and fucking gay porn or whatever. Doesn't work like that. You especially can't spend it on van repairs and upgrades. So anyway, we all know where this is headed. He's got no reputation left, so if he thinks he's going to promote the Assyrian nation while people remember that he used to be a troll swearing at everyone in Assyrian, or getting a Polish mate to swear at everyone in Assyrian, and, he thinks that there's not going to be anyone find out about any Craigslist ads and the like, or any bestiality, or any other shenanigans like Janelle and anything else that Amanda Mays said. Well, no. The Assyrian people won't want you promoting them at all. You would make them look bad. In fact, you couldn't make yourself look worse if you tried, because, yeah. Anyway, this is probably just another plan to mooch off someone, as most of his ideas are, including the one where he's going to, stick his mum in a camper trailer towed behind the shitbox van with a bucket engine that he's already got, and then take all the pension. And, we all know how that went. Went with a restraining order. Was one of the things it went with. But anyway, that's his latest crapola.